even though everyone wants you to think nothing can be done to enforce the rule of law during this coronavirus. Judicial Watch is proving that wrong. We continue to do the heavy lifting during the coronavirus. Our legal team worked hard to pursue and file a new piece of litigation to make sure that your elections will be cleaner over the short, medium, and long term. We filed a new lawsuit against the state of North Carolina and certain counties in North Carolina over their failure to take reasonable steps to clean up their voting rolls. How do we know they haven't taken reasonable steps to clean up their voting rolls? Well, they've got 1 million inactive voters on the rolls. And typically speaking, an inactive voter is someone who hasn't voted for several presidential or general federal elections. And federal law requires that you remove them after a period of time. You send them a notice. If they don't respond or otherwise vote, over the course of 5 years, you got to respond. You got to remove them. So there's plenty of time if you're a voter who is registered but who hasn't been active, to get back to the state and let them know you still want to be registered. And of course, even if you are removed, you can re-register and just show up at the polls and say, I want to vote. That's the way it typically works. So no one's going to be denied their right to vote. But what will happen is that dirty names, more or less, would be removed if they were following the law. And what is the law? The National Voter Registration Act, which requires states to take these reasonable steps to clean up the rolls. And it's popularly known as the Motor Voter Bill because the left pushed it out to require everyone to register or be given the opportunity to register at DMVs, at any place where public benefits are dispensed. And so there was a concern that when you do that, you'll get double registrations, people improperly registering a vote and such. So the deal was that they would have a requirement that states take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls. Well, guess which part of the law was enforced and which part of the law wasn't enforced? Well, the left went to court to force registration, to force the states and localities to register voters, but no one wanted to enforce the part of the law requiring the states to clean up the list. Look, if you're eligible to vote, you have every right under the sun to register to vote, and you should exercise that right if you so choose to do so. Again, if you so choose to do so. But if you move away, or you die, or you reside in more than one state, or you're otherwise become ineligible to vote for other reasons, your name shouldn't be on the list, don't you think? And the state should take reasonable steps to take your name off the list. So if they send you a card and you don't respond, and then you don't respond, and then you don't vote in the next general election, and then you don't vote in the next general election after that, that's as long as 5+ years, the states are supposed to take your names off the rolls. The Justice Department refused to enforce that part of the law, more or less, and thankfully there was a private right of action in the law, meaning that a group like Judicial Watch could come in and sue states to enforce the law. And we were the first private entity to file these lawsuits. We filed them beginning around 2012 against Indiana and Ohio. Indiana changed their law, so we were happy. So we ended the lawsuit. Ohio settled with us, so we were happy. We ended the lawsuit, and Ohio began the process of cleaning up the rolls. But the left was outraged at that, and they challenged the consequences of the settlement. It was upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States in 2018. So the writing was on the wall that other states needed to enforce the rule of law here. And in California, where we had sued, both California and Los Angeles County, they settled with us. And Los Angeles County, as a result of our settlement, is removing up to 1.6 million names from their voter rolls. You heard that right, 1.6 million names. Now that process, as I described, will take potentially years, but because the process begins, it means that people, in theory, get removed almost immediately once the state finds out they're no longer eligible. Certainly that's the way it's supposed to work. And certainly if they're dead, they shouldn't be on the rolls at all, and that should be a no-brainer in terms of removal. So that's where we stood, and of course we had a case in Kentucky as well, which is going to result in the removal of at least 250,000 names from the rolls. And that was a result of a consent decree that the state of Kentucky entered into. And so we had found nationally, the first time we did a national analysis of this, there were 3.5 million extra names on the rolls. And so we pursued and pushed a bunch of states on that issue. And now, according to our 2019 analysis, there are 2.5 million names on the rolls who arguably shouldn't be there. And in this North Carolina lawsuit, we found there are 1 million extra names on the rolls in North Carolina. You heard that right, 1 million in North Carolina. So even though Judicial Watch's lawsuits have cut the extra names by a significant margin, and there's still too many names on the rolls. And when I say 2.5 million names on the rolls nationally, that is somewhat limited, because our experts, didn't look at every county necessarily, and had a very high standard by which under which they would add a name as being, quote, inactive or extra onto our list. So arguably it's millions more that you have to be sensitive about in terms of making sure your rolls are clean if you're a state or local election official.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.